This is Rumi's guide to getting started with grazing management, where we'll be sharing tips and tricks to improve your farm profitability and resilience. In this video, we'll be talking about animal demand. So animal demand is the feed that the animals need to eat each day in order to perform their functions. So some of that's maintenance, some of that might be growth, some of it could be lactation or pregnancy. In terms of how we can calculate it on farm, well, we can calculate it on farm using a percentage of the animal's body weight. So we look at the cow and say the average cows in that group are around 650 kilos and multiply it by a percentage in order to estimate the demand, their food demand, their feed demand, and the demand we're using, or the number we're trying to get to, is a kilos of dry matter number. The reason we get into kilos of dry matter is because then we can compare it to maybe our plate meter readings, or the numbers we can get out of a grazing app like Rumi. And once we've got demand and supply, and they're both in kilos of dry matter, we can compare the two, and we can then start to work out if we're in a pasture surplus or a pasture deficit. We can go through some of the tips that we share in videos about those features, and in terms of how to manage those periods of time on the farm for best outcome. In terms of calculating animal demand, we can use, say, some of these percentages of the average body weight of the animals in the group to work out what the demand might be. And kind of off the bespoke percentages we use is 1.5% is maintenance. So maintenance purely means the animal maintaining body weight in reasonable conditions, reasonable weather conditions. So in the winter, if it's very cold or wet, 1.5% may actually become closer to 2. But in the summer, in the growing season, April to October, 1.5% is what they need to eat just to maintain themselves. If we've got animals that are maybe in the early stages of pregnancy, or animals where we're looking to see a little bit of growth, then we'd increase that to 2.5%. So that's maintenance plus growth. And then if we've got animals that are maybe lactating, so this could be ewes and lambs, or cows and calves, or milking cows, then the percentage would increase to around 3.5%. So that's maintenance plus lactation. So again, we can use an example just to see how this pans out. So let's say I've got some 400 kilo store cattle. That I would like to grow. Then they're not lactating and they're not at maintenance, so we can use the 2.5% figure. That's the one that's most appropriate in that situation, to work out how much feed they would need to eat in kilos of dry matter per day. So 400 kilos, so we do 400 kilos as the average weight, times by 2.5% equals 10 kilos of dry matter per day. Now, if we had a group of, let's say, 50 animals, then the total group demand would be 50 times 10 to equal 500 kilos of dry matter per day for the group. For reference, a round bale of hay or silage is around 220 to 240 kilos of dry matter. So we'd expect that group, if they were going to grow, to be eating a couple bales a day. Or if that group went into a paddock, let's say the paddock was 1 hectare, and they were going to go in and there was an entry cover of around 3,000 kilos, and we wanted them to leave 1,500 behind, there'd be 1,500 kilos available, so they should be in that paddock therefore for 3 days. 1,500 divided by 500 kilos is 3 days worth of grazing. So those numbers start to become really useful. One, because we can tell how long a field or a paddock might last them, how long they should be in there to graze, or how much supplementary feed they might need during a period of feed deficit. But equally, if we know how much area is available, so if we know that actually those 50 animals that need 500 kilos per day are spread across an area of 10 hectares, then 500 divided by 10 gives us 50. And that is 50 kilos of dry matter of dry matter per hectare per day. So that's what we need that area to grow in order to produce enough feed to feed the animals for them to grow. And again, if we're measuring pasture, we're using a pasture management app like Rumi. Rumi is doing this work for you. It's doing the calculations for you. You know, as a farmer, how many animals you've got, hopefully, and roughly what weight they're going to be. And then Rumi's filling in the blanks. So Rumi's telling you an estimate of how much they need to eat, and then enable you to start to match that animal demand with the farm supply. So again, you can make good decisions about what to do in a surplus or a deficit situation. It also means you can check that the animals are fully fed. And if they're not being fully fed, you can start to think about what some of the options are to change that situation, or be prepared for their performance to be maybe not to the potential, and either be okay with that or change the situation. So being able to calculate animal demand becomes really useful. It's useful understanding where the numbers come from, and how you can do it sort of as a ready reckoner approach. You can do on back of envelope sort of thing on farm to kind of check some details, or by using a tool like the Rumi app that starts to do the calculations for you, leaving you to do the management and to work out what to do in some of these situations that arise on farm as pasture growth changes throughout the year.
Improve your soil health and increase your farm's productivity. Get started with Rumi today by clicking on the link in the description.